We got it. We'll be covering a bunch of topics tonight, starting with why do we want to attract birds to our yards? What brings them to us? Different types of bird food and feeders. We'll talk about bird baths and other water sources, and different types of shelter, bird houses, and natural shelter that we can provide. And we'll cover a few common questions that people have asked us over the years and that we've wondered about and have done some research to figure out some answers. So let's start with why attract birds. We do it for ourselves. The birds don't need us to feed them. They can feed themselves just fine on their own. But if we do offer food, we get to enjoy them close up, beautiful, they're interesting. They add such color and brightness, especially at this time of year when it can be so dreary in our yards. Scott and I enjoy the interesting behaviors that we observe as we're watching our backyard friends. So it's a wonderful hobby and a lot of fun. And we've learned a lot just by watching the birds in our yard. The little bird that you see here at our feeder is a rose-breasted grosbeak, which if we're lucky, it stops by our feeder once or twice in the spring, and then perhaps on its fall migration as well. So from the common birds like this beautiful blue jay to the less common birds that might stop at our feeder, like this another blue colored bird here called the indigo bunting. All birds are beautiful. So how do we attract them? Just like us and all other animals, birds need food, water, and shelter. And if we provide those, that they will come to our yard. So let's start talking about feeders and food first. We'll talk about the location of feeders, where to place them in your yard, where's the best place to place them, different types of food, and different types of feeders. So first, location. We want to place our feeders near shrubs, trees, branches, places where birds can take shelter when they're not eating. They'll be much more likely to come to our feeders if we do have trees and shrubs nearby. Birds have a lot of predators, and they are going to feel safer and more comfortable in the feeding situation if they have some place to fly off to nearby, that they don't have to fly far. So, oh, and this cylindrical metal object is a squirrel baffle, and we'll be discussing squirrels and how to deter them a lot later in this program. So these mourning doves are lined up, kind of staging themselves, waiting for their turn at the feeder in a nice, safe place. So they're on a branch of a tree. They have branches over them. It's wintertime, as you can see, but still there's dead leaves, there's vines, there's other branches. So they feel very safe sitting here waiting for their turn at the feeder. There are many different types of feeders, starting with the platform feeder, and we'll discuss these in more detail. The trough feeder, the tube feeder, suet feeders, hummingbird feeders, improvised feeders. So let's start with the platform. So this is clearly a platform. It's just a flat surface with a little edge around it to keep the seed in. This one has a screen along the bottom. You can't really see the screen, but it's down there. It covers the entire bottom, so that if it rains, the rainwater can just drain right through and won't cause the seeds to get moldy or rot. So the types of birds that might come to a platform feeder like this might be birds that you ordinarily might see feeding on the ground, like the cardinal. This is a female cardinal. Mourning doves. Most often we see them on the ground, but they will come to platform feeders. A trough feeder is almost the same as a platform feeder. It's just shaped a little bit differently, like a trough shape. And the same types of birds might come to the trough feeder. This is a very old trough feeder. Scott's father built this probably 60 years ago, and it's still hanging in our yard. You notice here that there's a hole drilled here, and there's another hole drilled here. I mean, this is so old, it sort of has, you know, holes that weren't drilled, but in any case, it's, if you do make your own feeder, it's very important to have these holes drilled in the bottom, again, so that the water can drain through. But, you know, here's a grackle, one of our beautiful blackbirds, at the trough feeder. He would just as well be at the platform feeder. Tube feeders are probably the most common feeders that we see. In fact, I think if there is anyone here who hasn't started bird feeding and is interested in beginning, the recommendation we probably would have would be to start with one tube feeder and hang it, use a squirrel baffle if you have squirrels, and fill it with black oil sunflower seed, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But it's a very good way to draw songbirds, little birds like this goldfinch will come to a to a tube feeder. This is another type of tube feeder with, it's a specialized one that holds finch food or Niger seed, which is that really, really tiny seed you see in there. This tube has very, very teeny holes, teeny ports, so that the very small seed won't come pouring out. Suet feeders, we'll discuss more about suet feeders, but obviously suet is a very popular bird food as well, not only to woodpeckers, but especially to woodpeckers. And you can see that this is the kind of suet that you can buy, you know, at the market or at Agway or, you know, your hardware store or just about anywhere. It has suet mixed with seed, and it's formed into these cakes, which very conveniently fits into the little cage suet feeders that you can also buy. Of course, you can also buy suet from your butcher and hang that as well. Hummingbird feeders are just specialized little feeders for hummingbirds. And they come in many different designs. Basically, they're just a liquid made that you can make yourself with a cup of water, a quarter cup of sugar, bring that to a boil and cool it off, and you've got your hummingbird food. And then there's improvised feeders like this coconut feeder. Again, we've got another goldfinch here. We have a little structure that we built in our backyard, just a little statue type thing, and it becomes a bird feeder when we put seed on it. So that's another type of improvised feeder. We were at a kind of natural area a couple of weeks ago, and the people who run it were using a dead stump as an improvised feeder just by putting some black oil sunflower seed on it, and this chickadee is enjoying that. Sometimes our hand can be an improvised feeder. These Canada jays up in the Adirondacks, there are some places up there where people put bird feeders out along the trail, and these are very, very congenial birds anyway, so they're easily adapted to humans, and they will come and eat peanuts out of your hand. So different types of food. I mentioned black oil sunflower seed, finch or Niger seed, and that specialized tube feeder that I showed you. We'll talk about millet and mixed seeds, which is kind of fun. We like to mix seeds here ourselves. Peanuts, cracked corn, suet for your suet feeder, hummingbird food, and fruit. So, as I said, black oil sunflower seed is kind of the #1 all around favorite bird food. It's very high in fat and calories, so that's what the birds are looking for, to get that energy, to get them through the day, especially in the cold winter. This cardinal is having a very easy time. He'll just crack that shell very easily with that big seed cracking beak. The black oil sunflower seed also has the advantage of having a very thin shell, so it's easier for birds to crack it. But finches do have those sort of large, strong beaks, and you can see this house finch has cracked the seed open and is eating the seed. He's cracked the shell open and he's eating the seed very easily there on his little perch. Purple finch will also come to the black oil. And so will the chickadee, who has a really tiny little beak and can't really crack it open, even the black oil sunflower seed with the thin shell. So the chickadee has a different strategy. He will pick up the seed, carry it to a nearby branch, put the seed between his little feet, and peck away at it with his little bill until he opens it and opens the shell that way and eats the seed. Mourning doves will swallow the entire seed with the shell whole, and their digestive system takes care of the shell. So different birds have different strategies. We don't usually see woodpeckers eating sunflower seeds, but this one was, so we added that because it's kind of interesting to see woodpeckers eating sunflower seeds. This is a downy woodpecker, our smallest woodpecker. So here's the finch food that I showed you in the previous picture. Again, you can see how tiny it is. And if this were put in a regular tube feeder with those big round ports, it would just come pouring out. So it has different types of specialized tubes. Here's another type. This one is sort of a mesh covering, and the birds just cling to the mesh and eat the seeds right through it. Millet, especially white millet, is a favorite of ground feeding birds. So your sparrows, juncos, that sort of bird will come. We put millet out in the winter time, especially for the juncos that visit us in the winter. Mixed seeds are, as I said before, we have fun mixing seed, and we'll take some of the black oil sunflower seeds, some peanuts, some millet, and we'll mix it all together and scatter it on the ground. This is a pine grosbeak, a female pine grosbeak, enjoying some mixed seeds. I'm not sure which one she's particularly fond of. Probably they're picking the black oil sunflower seeds out first, because that does seem to be a favorite. So here's some mixed seed. You can also buy these mixed seed in bags, which we do sometimes. This one has some dried fruit in it, and it always seems to be a favorite. Birds come and clean out the sweet fruit mixed seed mix before they eat anything else. I think it's kind of like candy. I think it's like having Hershey bars in there. They seem to like it a lot. Peanuts, some birds really go for the peanuts, like the gray jay that we showed you earlier, eating out of Scott's hand. Also, our local blue jays love peanuts, and so do nuthatches. So here we have some shelled peanuts in a peanut feeder, but you don't really need a peanut feeder. You can use a regular feeder or put it on a trough feeder or throw them on the ground, in which case the squirrels will eat them immediately. But you can also put them in a platform feeder. So these are nuthatches. This one on the left is a red-breasted nuthatch. It has kind of an orangey color breast and a beautiful white stripe above the eye. This is its cousin, the white-breasted nuthatch. And they do like to eat upside down. So if you see birds on a tree trunk, sort of walking upside down, pecking away, picking out little insects and whatnot, it's most likely going to be one of these nuthatches. So chickadees like peanuts, and so do titmice. This is a tufted titmouse here with a little tuft. And so do woodpeckers. Here's a red-bellied woodpecker. If you live in a place that has wild turkeys present, you might want to put out, and if you want to attract them, you might want to put out some cracked corn. They will come for cracked corn, and so will some sparrows. This is a Harris's sparrow, which was in our general neighborhood a few years ago, and the property owner was feeding it cracked corn. It's a kind of a rare bird for our part of the country. So hummingbird food, as I said before, you know, these bird feeders, hummingbird feeders come in many different designs. Most of them are red. As we know, hummingbirds are attracted to red, but we don't want to color the food red because we don't really want to be feeding them artificial coloring. But there's usually a little bit of red somewhere on the feeder. This one even has some flowery looking things. So again, the hummingbird food is simply water, a cup of water, a quarter cup of sugar, bring that to a boil and cool it off and put it in your feeder. You need to change it quite frequently in the summertime because it will not, you know, it won't stay fresh. Here we have an unusual bird on a hummingbird feeder. This is a black-throated blue warbler, and he just seems kind of curious about what's in this thing. So that was interesting. So I think I've covered most of this already. Oh, I didn't. Okay, so we want to put out our feeders really early in the spring, by May 1st. Late April isn't too early. So you won't see the hummingbirds right away, but put your hummingbird feeder out if you want to attract them. They tend to come, and when they're migrating in, they set up a feeding circuit, and they'll know where the flowers are, they'll know where the feeders are, and if they see your feeder, they'll start using it, and then they'll use it again and again. So put it out by May 1st at least. And we only have one type of hummingbird here in the Northeast, the ruby-throated hummingbird. So it's a very easy identification to make. Some people have really good luck putting out orange slices or halves of oranges or other types of fresh fruit to attract Baltimore Orioles. So that's something that you might want to try. You can either just, you know, nail it to a tree, or you can, you know, as we did here, you can just sort of attach it, just stick it onto a pole, like a shepherd's hook or something like that. And again, here's the suet feeders that I was talking about earlier. On the left, we have a downy woodpecker coming to the suet, and here is a relative of the downy. This is a hairy woodpecker. You'll notice the much larger beak, and he's an overall larger bird as well. but other birds will come to suet as well. Here's a Carolina wren. Beautiful little bird who will sing even in the winter time. In the spring, we're hoping to see our catbirds again. They do come to the suet feeder, and we get to have close looks at the beautiful catbirds. And now I'm actually going to turn it over to Scott for a bit, and he's going to start talking about the importance of water.
Oh, well, thank you, Denise. Let me just. There's one moment here. I'm sorry. Okay. So as Denise mentioned, it's food, water, and shelter, and I'll be talking about water and then a bit about shelter. And it's really important to offer a water source for birds, particularly in the winter time. And by having a water source, you can attract different species of birds than would come to a feeder. For example, this northern mockingbird, we've never seen a mockingbird at our feeders, but they come to the berry trees in the yard, which is shelter and food, and they very often come to our bird bath. This one was obviously not having much success, but we added a bird bath heater, and now we're able to provide a water source year round. The bird bath heaters, they're various kinds. You can get bird baths that have built-in heaters, or you can buy heaters of various sorts to put into an existing bird bath. Now, this is just a heater and a coil and plugged into an outdoor outlet. There are other kinds that they're generally online $30 or $40, or in bird stores for probably about that. We get birds coming to drink at the bird bath, to obviously bathe at the bird bath. I mean, robins, for instance, we've been having robins off and on this week, and there's no food in the yard for them. They're not able to get their spring and summer food of worms and other things and living things in the ground, but they will come and drink and bathe at the bird bath. We have never gotten a yellow-bellied sapsucker, another type of woodpecker. We've never gotten one at our suet feeder, but we have had them occasionally at the bird bath. We've also had cedar waxwings come in. And in the fall, even some warblers, such as this black-throated green here in the upper left, and a Tennessee warbler on the upper right. I'm sorry, a blackpoll on the upper right, and a Tennessee down at the bottom. I was looking up the wrong. Yeah, the Tennessee at the bottom, the black ball at the upper right and the black-footed green at the upper left. And we've even had Cooper's hawks in the bird bath. This was a young bird. The family had a nest maybe a half a block away, and these young hawks would come and visit the yard and kind of look at the birds and know they were something they should be interested in, but they weren't really ready to go after them. You know, Coopers and sharp-shinned hawks, they're accipiters, they're bird-eating hawks. And Denise will talk a little bit more about that near the end. But these accipiters, again, like the sharp-shinned and the Cooper's hawk, will fly through the dense woods and capture small birds on the wing. They'll come and they'll take birds off the ground. They'll take birds at a bird feeder. And again, Denise will talk a little bit more about that. So continuing with water, any kind of moving water is particularly attractive to birds. And you can use a hose, a sprinkler, a mister, a dripper like this, and that will also, again, really serve to attract birds to your water source. And if you have a pond or can put in a pond, or even if there's a pond nearby, you might get birds such as this great blue heron visiting your backyard. Okay, so moving on to shelter, and I want to talk pretty broadly about shelter. Shelter is not just birdhouses. It's not just putting up birdhouses. It's it's natural cavities, it's trees, it's ground cover, it's bushes, some of which also provide food. So there's a lot of aspects to shelter. These are northern flickers, a type of woodpecker that generally feeds on the ground, and as they're going after ants. These were at the Altamont Fairgrounds a few years ago. Bluebirds do not make their own nest cavities. They use old woodpecker cavities, but they do take full advantage of them. Larger cavities may host a wintering eastern screech owl. This is a red morph, a red color form of the eastern screech owl. That was actually at Five Rivers Center in Delmar. And along the Hudson River is this gray morph, eastern screech owl. So if you have older trees on your property with cavities, as long as it's not a hazard, a fall hazard from that tree, we recommend keeping it. So back to bluebirds for a moment here. The New York State bird here, the eastern bluebird, really declined very seriously 30 or 40 years ago, and has made a tremendous comeback due to people taking an interest in them and building bluebird boxes and putting up boxes on their properties and whole trails of bluebird boxes along major roadways. For example, there's a Route 20 bluebird trail. So the bluebird has really come back. And if you have a fair amount of open habitat, such as they're not birds of the woods, but they're more birds of the field. And if you could put a bluebird box up kind of not way out in the middle of the field, but kind of closer to the wooded edge of the field, there's a good chance that you'll get eastern bluebirds. And sometimes other species come and take over the bluebird boxes, such as this tree swallow. And house wrens will use them as well. Purple martins are a member of the swallow family, and they like apartment style living. There's not a lot of purple martins in the capital region. There are a few. If you do have the fortune of seeing them, they're very, very beautiful swallow, very, very graceful flyers, and very beautiful birds. If you have a barn, a shed, a garage that you leave the door open, you might find the mud nest of a barn swallow in there. Put up a box for owls. Again, kind of mimicking the natural cavities that they like. And there's a good sized box that was inhabited by a family of tiny little salt wet owls at a friend's property a few years ago. So again, a lot of different cavities, natural and human-made, will attract birds for nesting and wintering in these cavity houses. So there's more to shelter, and a lot of it is just having enough vegetation present that the birds can take cover in. For example, the catbird, the gray catbird, is a little bit smaller than a robin. It has a cat-like meow call, and they're a bird of dense brushy habitat. And this is all these are all non-woody plants. This fern and wildflower garden in our backyard provides a lot of cover and shelter, largely for ground dwelling species. And in the winter time, when a lot of the vegetation has died back, we will make a brush pile in the backyard, and that provides a fair amount of shelter, cover for a variety of wintering birds. And we mentioned the hawk, the accipiters, the sharp-shinned hawk, and the Cooper's hawk before. We've seen accipiters come and actually land on top of this brush pile full of birds, and the birds go down inside here, and the hawks are unable to reach them to get their meal. So a brush pile can provide really, really good sort of extra winter shelter. And some of the birds we might see in and around the brush pile would include the lovely fox sparrow. It's a large sparrow with these pretty rufous stripes. junco, the dark-eyed junco, which we see in the wintertime. And they're gone in the summer, but they don't necessarily go far. They will breed up in the Helderbergs, for example. The American tree sparrow with that pretty spot on its front, and the song sparrow. So all ground dwelling birds, along with cardinals, house sparrows, mourning doves, others that will seek shelter in a brush pile. Another example of the mourning dove with a whole sunflower seed. So the shelter can also, not only does it provide cover and protection for the birds, but it's a place that they can nest in often, and a source of nesting material like this house sparrow is using. And just having trees of varying sizes can just be a stopover place for passage through migrants like this magnolia warbler. We saw the yellow-bellied sapsucker at the bird bath a few minutes ago. The shelter of this tree, of this live tree, also provides a food source for this species. The yellow-bellied sapsucker will drill these neat rows of holes in a live tree, and the sap will be produced in there, or will fill in there, and they'll come back and drink the sap. It doesn't seem to harm our trees, but and another reason to keep dead and downed trees is, they're used by woodpeckers, small and large, for food sources, for nest cavities, like this pileated woodpecker or pileated woodpecker. And flowers, so flowering plants, flowering shelter also provides food. Various types of trumpet vines. Attract hummingbirds and also hummingbird moths. And a really good thing to plant are berry trees of various kinds. Honeysuckle, grapes, various types of crab apples and what comes to mind, roses, and really any dogwoods, really any berry producing trees provide a good source of off-season food, fall and into the winter food for birds, such as waxwings, pine grosbeaks, and robins. I mentioned that robins are they're here in the winter. They can be attracted to your bird bath, your water feature, but but they're generally, other than that, not in your yards in the winter, not in our yards. They are often in groups in places with where their fall winter food sources are prevalent. And example of this are berry trees and apple orchards. This is the orchard at Five Rivers Environmental Ed Center, and often has a number of robins in it, eating away at the crab apples. So as you attract birds, as you put out seed, water, shelter, and shelter with food for birds, you will attract a number of other creatures as well. You may want these other creatures there. You may not want these other creatures there, but they will often come to your yard. I mentioned the hummingbird moth, and this is a fascinating creature that has a very similar feeding strategy as does the hummingbird. They use the same food sources, basically drink nectar from flowers. They hover, and instead of the beak of the bird, they unfurl this proboscis and poke that down into the flower. So you look for these in your flower gardens. Giant swallowtails and a host of other butterflies will come to your flowers as well. The short-tailed shrew came from somewhere in the back of our yard and snatched a sunflower seed one winter. You may get groundhogs, aka woodchucks, rabbits. We have rabbits in the winter, frequently underneath our feeders, often at night. Opossums eating the seed, and these little creatures are underground now, but in the fall, the chipmunks spend seemingly every waking hour gathering up sunflower seeds and stashing them for the winter. And we've also had skunks coming in and eating the seeds. Denise will talk a little bit about some ways to discourage some of these animals if you don't want them around. And at this point, I will turn it back over to Denise, who will talk about other creatures, wanted, unwanted, perhaps, and various other common questions that often come up related to feeding birds at home. Denise?
Thanks, Scott. So, let's see. Thank you. So some of the common questions that we'll cover involve squirrels, hawks, bears, and cats. What about cleaning feeders, sick birds, birds hitting windows? What about going on vacation and when to feed birds and when to stop feeding them? We'll talk about cowbirds, brown-headed cowbirds. So starting with squirrels, as you can see here, they are little thieves. They're very smart and persistent. They just will keep, if they know that there's food, they'll try and try and try until they succeed at getting it. We tend to feed them. Here's a squirrel on one of those improvised feeders that we have in our yard. We just sort of generally give up and figure that squirrels are going to eat some of our bird seed. So we feed them. Here we fed them a little pumpkin after the holidays. They love pumpkin and pumpkin seeds. And that keeps them busy for a while. It keeps them away from the feeders. Some people put these cages, buy these feeders with cages around them that are supposed to be squirrel proof, but little red squirrels are small enough to get through. So they're not really that squirrel proof. And here's another one of our improvised feeders. I think you saw this earlier in the program, the little coconut feeder. And this squirrel has just sort of entwined himself around the twine that's holding it up and is just feasting on the sunflower seed. And here, that little, the little tiny ports on the Niger seed feeder, the finch feeder, is a little bit too small for him, but he is using those big squirrel teeth to make improvements on that feeder. And now he's got a whole supply of Niger seed to eat. So squirrels really are persistent. We had some extra seed one time that we put in this great big bin, plastic compost bin. And we put a big rock on top of it, and we thought it would be pretty safe from the squirrel. You could see the squirrel here. He's thinking about his strategy. And before you know it, he had chewed a hole in the top of that bin, and he was just big enough to go in and come out. It was a perfect squirrel feeder. So these baffles do work. They are the only thing that we have found that keeps squirrels mostly off of our bird feeders. We still have a few squirrels who are athletic and strong enough to jump off of our roof and make it onto our bird feeders. But most of them can't do that. And they can't beat this particular type of baffle. It's open on the bottom, so they crawl up underneath here, but it's closed off at the top, so they can't get to the seed. So here he is trying to get up, but they are not able to get any seed that way. So we live with the squirrels. We kind of enjoy them, to be honest, and we try to keep some of the seed for the birds. So this is a Cooper's hawk. You saw the young Cooper's hawk earlier, the one sitting in the bird bath, that little baby. This is also a little bit older young Cooper's hawk. He's looking over at that brush pile that Scott was telling you about earlier, and he knows that that's where the birds are. So hawks, these accipiters who eat birds, that's their food source, they can be a problem with bird feeding. Here's a sharp-shinned hawk. This is the other type of accipiter that we have, eating a mourning dove in our yard. If you see that the hawks are coming like on a daily basis and taking your birds, one thing that you can do to discourage them is to just take down your feeders for a while, maybe a couple of weeks, just shut the whole process down. The hawks will find another place to find their food. I mean, this is their food. So birds are what they eat. So if we're attracting a lot of birds to one place, it's like providing a buffet for them. So, we might want to just shut our feeding down for a while. You can start it up after a couple of weeks, and the hawks will have dispersed and found another place to hunt. This particular bird feeder was taken down by a bear. This is not our yard. We don't have bears. here in the town of Colony, as far as I know. They have not been to our yard anyway. But if you do live in an area that is prone to bears during the summer months, then you are much better off not feeding birds during bear season, obviously, for obvious reasons. You should just, in that case, you should just feed birds during the time that the bears are hibernating. Another hunter of birds is the cat. Both feral cats and pet cats that are allowed to roam outside are responsible for a lot of bird deaths. 2.4 billion birds a year are killed by cats. So this is a neighbor's cat under our one of our shelter bushes, just kind of waiting for a ground feeding bird to land nearby so he can attack it. So we just encourage people to try to keep their cats indoors to protect the bird life, especially if you're going to be feeding birds. People have asked us about sick birds, and we have come across them. This is our bird feeder, and you can see that this house finch is sick. It's got an eye disease like conjunctivitis. And this is a serious, a highly contagious disease among birds. So if you see a bird that looks like this and is ill, then you definitely want to take down your feeders, clean them. We use a solution of 10% bleach, approximately, just a little bit of bleach in a bucket of water, and scrub your feeders out. Rinse them well, let them dry thoroughly, keep them down for a couple of weeks because we want the birds to disperse. This is a contagious disease, so we want them to be socially distant, as we've learned how to be socially distant in the last couple of years. You can restart your feeding, your bird feeding again in a couple of weeks. So it's obviously important to keep your bird bath clean as well as your feeders. With bird baths, especially in the summertime, we don't want them to be a source of mosquitoes. So mosquito breeding. So we want to keep them clean and change the water every day or every couple of days in the summertime. When we're on vacation, we shut our water, our bird bath down completely because we really don't want water sitting around, open water, for mosquitoes to breed in. So we just close it down. Birds hitting windows. This is a problem. We don't have it happen very often. This poor mourning dove hit our window and did not survive, obviously. But our bird feeders are quite close to our picture window. They're only about 10 feet away or so. So birds don't really get up a lot of speed. So even if they hit our window, they usually just fly off. It's rare that we see a bird die when they hit our window. But the reason why that the birds are flying to your window is that they see the reflection of the background. So they see more grass and more trees and more bird feeders. So they're flying to get to those, and they don't realize that there's glass there. So some people use things like streamers that they might hang in their window to break up that reflection so that the birds can actually see the window and see that, this is not someplace that they want to fly. Or decals that you could put on the window, to just anything to break up that reflection. So what about summertime? Often people ask us if they should continue feeding birds in the summer. And again, if you have bears, then obviously no. And otherwise, it's really up to you. We choose to feed the birds in the summertime, although they eat an awful lot because they're raising these families, but the rewards are great because they bring their young to the feeders, and we get to see these baby cardinals and baby rose-breasted grosbeaks. And it's just really fun and interesting to see the young birds coming to the feeders. So we choose to do it. But birds don't need us to feed them at any time of year. So it's entirely up to you. So the last little thing that I wanted to cover is a little bit about brown-headed cowbirds. These are, native blackbirds. This is a female brown-headed cowbird. She's sitting very high in a tree and she's looking all around, looking for other birds' nests, because the brown-headed cowbird does not build their own nest. They lay their eggs in other birds' nests. So she's looking for usually a small bird's nest, like a warbler, or like one of these little chipping sparrows, which is one of our tiniest sparrows. And she'll lay her egg, her big egg, in this little bird's nest. And this little chipping sparrow, who looks like kind of bedraggled because she's been spending weeks feeding this giant baby. They're interesting birds, though, because they've evolved this very special strategy. They used to follow herds of wild cattle. That's why they're called cowbirds. So they would follow the bison as they kind of tramped through the prairie, and they would eat the insects that the cattle kind of drove up with their feet. And so because the cattle were always moving, the birds had to move. So they were nomadic, and they didn't really have time to build nests and lay eggs and raise young. And so this is how they evolved. And this is what they do. It is often to the detriment of the smaller birds' young, however, because this is a large baby and demands all of the food. So often the actual young of the chipping sparrow or warbler or whatever small bird has been chosen do not survive. So again, just to wrap up here, why attract birds to our yards? We do it for ourselves, because birds are so beautiful and bright and colorful and interesting. We love the hobby, we have a lot of fun, and we learn a lot. And again, just like us, birds need food, water, and shelter. And when we provide these, they come to our yard. It's as simple as that. So if there are any questions, we will be happy to try to answer them as well as we can. I will stop sharing at this point. And there we go.
No. Good over here.
Yeah, so if there's any questions in the chat, we'll try to answer, or if people want to unmute and ask questions. Yeah. No guarantees, but we'll try.
Thank you. That was absolutely beautiful. What a great, great presentation. Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Cindy.
Oh my goodness. I have a whole new love for birds. I wrote a whole page of notes. I can't wait to look up some of these. So there are not any questions in the chat. Does anyone have a question that they would like to ask Denise and Scott? Go ahead, Joyce.
Hey, Joyce.
Hi. Beautiful photos as always. So thank you so much for that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
One thing you reminded me of was the importance of water. One of my neighbors has a heated bird bath, and it's like, Grand Central Station. It's so busy. And then, of course, that attracts them to the feeders. So I really should drag a bird bath out there. Nice heated, or should go get a nice heated bird bath. So good reminder of that. I have a general question. I've had bluebirds this week in the mornings, and they've come to the feeders that I have. I have just safflower seed, trying to discourage squirrels a little bit. And it has some peanuts in it too. So they come over and they kind of rummage around, they look kind of disappointed, and then they fly away. So I went out and I got some cake that had mealworms in it. And so I crumbled that up and I put that out on a platform feeder. And so far chickadees and tufted titmice are loving it, but hopefully the bluebirds will come back now that I have a special treat out for them, and maybe they'll enjoy some mealworms. So I don't know if there's anything else you can recommend for attracting bluebirds. There is a bluebird box in a field right near the yard, so I know that they're around every year. But if there's anything else I can do to, it's usually 2 females and a male right now, are kind of flitting around in the yard a lot.
You're so lucky.
I know.
Yeah, there are what they call bluebird wintering boxes. I think it's a larger type of box than the nest box. I know
Like a roosting box.
yeah, they have some of them. I think they were experimenting with them down at the Five Rivers Environmental Ed Center. I'm not sure how much success they're having with them, but I think they've had them for maybe a couple of winters now.
Okay. That's a great idea, right? To have a place they can shelter on cold nights. Okay.
They also will come to water. So if you do get that heated bird bath.
Yeah, that'll help for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
That's great. Nice to see you, Joyce.
Yeah.
You too.
Any other questions?
I've learned so much. I never knew about giving water to the birds in the wintertime. I mean, obviously it freezes, but I have a couple of questions. So we have these lovely little grand people. And so some of our winter projects are feeding the birds. So whether or not this is the right thing to do is what I'm going to ask you first. So we have done covering toilet paper rolls with peanut butter and sticking seeds to them. Is that okay?
Toilet paper rolls?
Is it
Cardboard, I guess, will disintegrate?
I think it would disintegrate.
Too quickly, you think? You think they might disintegrate too quickly?
I wonder about maybe covering a stick or a small log or something.
Would probably be that right. And
yeah,
then
and you can.
We did birdseed cookies. So it was a pretty much a cookie recipe. So it had like an egg in it and some flour and then obviously seeds, and then you covered it with more seeds. What do you think about that?
I don't know about eggs.
Yeah.
I know.
One thing that I think I read on one of those vlogs about, what you can do with your grandkids, was I think people do something with suet, and it was mixing seed and suet, and then kind of tamp it down. You can even mix peanut butter in it, and then kind of, I'm doing it with my hands and you can't see me, kind of flatten it out like a little pancake, and then the kids can take cookie cutters and cut those, and then put that in the fridge, and the suet will harden.
Okay. And
then if you put a little hole in it first, then they can hang that like a little ornament, or like a little, and then the birds will come and eat it. And there's nothing there that the birds can't eat. It's seed, suet, and peanut butter.
Okay, yeah, because that's the cookie thing, and it was a reputable source. I mean, I can't tell you now, but I was like, they loved making them, but I was like, eh. And something
it might not be bad.
It didn't get eaten, but who knows? I mean, it could have been something besides a bird that ate it. We don't know.
Or they might be also eating the cardboard, and I'm not sure how good that would be.
Yeah, but even the cookie, like the cookies, we did the cookies this year. We did the cardboard last year, and then ate the cookies. But I was just like, it seems strange to put an egg in there.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about it. I just don't know.
Yeah. You didn't mention? Did you mention about the holes drilled in the?
No.
Yeah, there's another type of feeder that we didn't mention tonight, but you can hang a log, maybe like a fireplace size log,
Mhm.
and drill a number of holes, maybe 1-inch holes, 1-inch diameter holes in it, and pack into those holes a mixture of peanut butter and seed,
Oh, cool.
particularly a small seed like a millet.
Yeah,
And the birds will, that's another kind of an improvised feeder that birds can come. Woodpeckers certainly would be very attracted to that,
Yeah.
and jays and others.
And then do you hang it or do you just go ahead and leave it on the ground?
I think you could do either, but if you leave it on the ground, I think the squirrels would
Right.
drag it off or try to. But you can try either. But
Okay.
I've seen them more hanging. But
yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
The other thing you can do is the old kindergarten project of taking a pine cone and rolling that in peanut butter. And
We've
then,
done that too. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm putting peanut butter on that and sticking seeds to it.
Yeah.
Those we can hang. Yep, this is our third attempt. We did the cookies this year, but I like the log idea.
yeah, great,
Idea.
good, good.
Anybody else have any questions for our lovely guests?
Just a comment. I have well, I don't know whether it's always the same one, but I have downy woodpecker couples who love my bird feeder.
Good.
great.
What do you feed them?
Just the
Suet cakes?
sunflower seeds.
The sunflower seeds. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, they eat things in the crabapple as well, probably the bugs and such,
Yeah.
but they'll stop at the feeder as they come and go.
That's wonderful.
Cindy, we actually have a handout, kind of a maybe page and a half handout that we give when we give this as a adult ed class, and we can send that to you, and you can share that out to everybody.
Perfect. Yeah, I can share that along with your information and your how to purchase and your Facebook. Yeah, but that'd be great.
We'll send that out to you.
Yeah.
Perfect. Great.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. This was absolutely wonderful. I learned so much, and I'm getting a bird bath out tomorrow. And so I greatly appreciate your coming, your love of birds, your gorgeous pictures. In addition to teaching about birds, you need to teach about photography because they are phenomenal. They were
Oh,
just
we do have that program.
Yeah, we do have a.
Oh, there you go. That's wonderful. Well, there's some things we can all look into. And again, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And for the rest of you that are members, I look forward to seeing you next month. And anyone's always welcome to attend our Zooms. They're on our website anytime. So have a wonderful evening. Happy bird keeping, bird watching, everybody. And keep safe and keep warm.
Thanks. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you very much.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ruth. Bye.
Bye.